They didn't hear you.
Hey, y'all!
There you go. Now they did. So I am going to be gone tomorrow and normally do the Thursday night debate live breakdown. So viewers didn't get too lonely and start to feel too neglected. Do a little live stream tonight. Jen was nice enough to join. So just thought we'd just do a Q&A live stream. So we're happy, within reason, to answer questions.
I'll just have what I think is within reason is broader than what Ben thinks is within reason. So we'll just go with that.
Wait a second, what's that?
We'll go with my view of what's in reason.
Oh, is that how that works? Okay. Yeah. Well, look, if you, I do reserve the right to pull the plug on some things, but depending on the topic, one of us might have more to say about it than the other.
That's a good way of putting it.
If you have questions, if there's stuff you want to ask about Trotsky, I'll have more to say. If you have stuff you want to ask about the Houston Astros, Jen will have more to say. It just really depends.
I love my Astros. I wore my Astros hoodie today.
Let's see. Trent says, "Hey Ben, can you do a debate breakdown of your convo with Michael Huemer?" Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do that sometime.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, right. Not all going to be that simple. We got a harder one from Oliver Adelson, who says, "Is the problem of induction a real problem?"
I mean, what does that mean?
So I guess this is the Hume stuff about induction.
No, I knew that. Like, what do you mean? Is it a real problem? Is it something we need to worry about? I would say no, because how can we even go through life if we're worried about it? Yeah, that's what I would tell my students. I would be like, try for an hour try to get through an hour without using induction, and then you tell me if you think this is something that you want to spend your life worrying about.
Which is kind of Hume's answer. Like he famously says, right? It's the inquiry concerning human understanding or treatise.
One of them.
Anyway, either there or the treatise on human nature, one or the other of them. He has this famous line where he says that these problems will really start to bother him and for a while, and then he'll go hang out with his friends and play billiards, and they'll stop seeming so pressing, and he'll kind of get over it.
It's like Descartes. How do we know we're not being deceived by the evil demon? Well, we don't. Next.
Yeah, it depends what you mean by no. If it's, can we be certain we're not being deceived by the evil demon? Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, I think this is context specific. Is it a problem in philosophy class? Yes. Is it a problem in actual life? No.
Yeah, and I guess similarly with the stuff about induction, I mean, I take it what you mean, Oliver, when you say you're not sure it's a real problem, might be something like, so inductive inferences, cases where even if it's a really good argument, it doesn't give us that mortal lock that deduction does, that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true, that it's just logically impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. And, reality usually isn't cooperative enough that we'll have enough evidence about anything that we could have those kinds of arguments for our preferred conclusions. But, okay, so, ultimately, if it's just that inductive inferences don't meet that sort of gold standard, whatever. I mean, they're inductive. They meet the silver standard. That seems kind of okay.
Or is the problem that induction is justified by induction? Well, yeah. I don't know. That's kind of my.
Yeah. So if the problem with induction being justified by induction, because you could say, I don't know, anything is going to be justified by some kind of reasoning, and so it's either inductive.
Yes, but it's justified by itself.
So if the question is inductive reasoning good reasoning, that there's no way to answer that doesn't use inductive reasoning, so you could worry that that's just circular.
That's what I was saying.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what you're saying by putting it in my own words, as I often do when I'm talking to people and try to understand what they say.
When I'm talking to these dummy intro students, I try and rephrase what they're saying into something coherent so that then I can respond.
And when I talk to anybody,
that's what Ben is saying.
I try to, rephrase it to make sure I'm following the thought. There aren't subtleties that are eluding me. Yeah, okay. So that's fair. And I guess there it really is going to be the same problem as Descartes, the, evil demon. And it's possible that, you think that you have a physical body and you're walking around interacting with people, but really it's just the demon deceiving you that, well, okay, if no means we can be absolutely certain that's not true, then no. If no means something like we have a true belief that it's not true, that's produced by reliable belief forming processes, then yeah, sure, we can know that that's not true. But if the context is arguing with the skeptic, then that's totally circular because they're not reliable if the skeptic is right. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how much you think we should worry about. We should worry about our ability to have a good answer to people who, hypothetical people who are skeptical about the most basic sort of premises that you could appeal to. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm probably with you. It seems like maybe you don't need to worry about that much. Like, it's an interesting question, but it's maybe not one you should lose that much sleep over.
Fair enough, as Ben would say.
I would say that. What's your opinion on cantaloupe?
It's all right.
Yeah.
I'll eat it if it's presented to me and it's good. It's not something I would ever seek out.
Fair enough.
My grandfather used to eat cantaloupe all the time, and there was always cantaloupe in the refrigerator. And when there's cantaloupe in the refrigerator smells like cantaloupe, which is not the ideal state of a refrigerator. I'm just gonna say. Fair enough. So I don't really want it in my refrigerator, is what I'm saying.
So it sounds like you don't like cantaloupe.
No, I do. I don't want it in my house, but if I'm out and it's presented to me and it's good, I'll eat it.
Fair enough.
How about you, Ben? Okay. So my take was much more nuanced.
It is.
This is the content people come here for. My nuanced take on cantaloupe.
Yeah, I'm just. How much should I trust Professor Wolf? Yeah, so people were.
That must be for you.
Well, I mean,
I don't know any Professor Wolves.
Wolves. Yeah, I guess you weren't along on the trip to New York when I was on his show, so.
Nope, nobody takes me anywhere.
Certainly could have come if you'd wanted to.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Take me to 7-Eleven. That's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So people are upset at Richard Wolff because of some comments that he made about like kind of worker militancy and sort of related it to vaccine mandates. And I'm not going to try to reproduce exactly what he said. In fact, I'm not even sure that I know like exactly word for word what he said. I know there's some dispute about whether the way it was being summarized on Twitter was entirely accurate, which I know would be unprecedented if like people were summarizing something on Twitter in a way that wasn't entirely accurate. But I mean, look, from what I understand and what he said, it sounds like, he had a bad take. He said something that's, I don't think the evidence is really there to support the claim that he's making. In fact, I'm sure that it isn't. But also, like, I don't know. But when you say how much should you trust him? I think there's a kind of...
I would put my life in his hands. Okay, go on.
I think there's a kind of inference that people are way too eager to do from somebody has a bad take, that they've got to, they're like, they say something that is mistaken or misguided to like, therefore, even if you liked them until 5 minutes ago, like this reflects badly on like their soul, that they're just a bad person, or they're
this has gotten dramatic.
They're an idiot, or they're an opportunist, they're a grifter. Yeah, it is dramatic, but I mean, like, this is I think way too many people, I'm not saying you, Silver, think. David Griscom actually did a good stream yesterday. I well, I listened to part of it while I was walking the dog.
You do so many things while you're walking Lucy.
I do. And I think he had a good line along these lines. Like I agree with, I think he got the sort of balance right in terms of like, okay, it was probably misrepresented, but even what he really said was still wrong. But also, like, you can be wrong about something without that being like, I'll wash my hands of you. I'll have nothing more to do with you.
Like when you unfriend somebody on Facebook.
Right.
I eschew thee with a firm hand.
Zeleny says Stuart Mill gave a cool description of induction. I assume that's John Stuart Mill, not just some guy named Stuart. How do we know we're not being manipulated? Well, you don't.
You don't. I'll let you handle that one.
Well, I mean, you read Dune.
Like a million years ago.
Yeah, I don't know that either of us have much for that one.
Where's Lucy? Lucy's down there on her bed.
Yeah.
Shabazz hasn't taken it over for the moment.
Where's the Lucy question?
You went past it.
All right. Well, anyway.
It was after the Cantaloupe question.
Yeah.
No, you're going north, not south. Oh, no, there it is.
Yeah, there we go.
Where's Lucy?
Yeah.
Hey, Lucy.
Lucy.
Do you want to join us?
Nah, she's staying in her doggy bed.
She's so boring.
The cat stole it for a long time, so I think she's just enjoying being able to be on it now.
We even got Shabazz his own, which he eschews with a firm paw. And he's only interested in hers.
Yeah. Mathematical induction, and this is super confusing, but is actually technically deductive. They call it induction.
Math is unreasonable, is what that is. That is outside of the bounds of reasonableness.
Yeah. I've actually been having to do tons of math this semester because the class that I've been teaching at Rutgers online this semester is FRDM, formal reasoning and decision making, which is like probability and stuff. So
yeah, this morning he was like, remember when we talked about the normalizing constant? And I was like, the normalizing constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to do that anymore.
Let's see. Yeah, it's a question about the John Deere strikers.
Is math invented or discovered? That would probably be a good question for Kathy.
Sure.
I would say discovered.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So my advisor in grad school, Otavio Bueno, was definitely an invented guy. I'm not totally sure what I think about that, honestly.
I don't think I could give you a well-reasoned, not nearly as nuanced as my take on Cantaloupe, but I feel like with all the things that I've encountered over the years, I have come to the conclusion that it is discovered.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, like there's this, I mean, again, I think there's probably some sense in which that's true. Like, like we don't.
Way to take a stand there,
like,
Ben.
well, I mean, I'm just trying to be accurate here.
We should definitely talk to Kathy about this.
I'm not trying to be entertaining. I'm trying to be accurate.
Me too. We should talk to Kathy about this.
I mean, like, I don't think you can just make it up any which way. Like, I think obviously there's a sense in which, given some really basic assumptions, things are objectively true or not. I mean, can you get back to assumptions that are basic enough, like that? What does it really mean for it to be discovered? Is there some like platonic heaven where the numbers live? That that's what you're discovering.
Yes.
And our
where the numbers live.
Our brains are just somehow making contact with it. I don't know. Let's see. Not a question, but good stuff. I think our video of the Kirk debate is up to about 11,000 views. Yeah. I would actually say the other night I'd be really fascinated to see what kind of feedback he's getting about it, since like every single person I've talked to about it.
You're like that dude that said he hates you, but you did a good job.
Yeah, Destiny, and in his review of the debate, like literally that was the last 15 seconds of his video. He's like, "Look, as much as I hate Ben Burgis, he did do a good job here."
And I was like, "Okay, there's somebody I need to track down and tell him what's what."
Okay. Let's not start any beef on here.
Where's Skippy the Bear when you need him?
Yeah. See. Yeah, John Deere. I saw that they rejected the deal. I mean, whatever. I mean, I don't know how much I have to say about that, except solidarity forever. I've got, if I think it's like in a year of a lot of dismal news, the one really good thing in the larger world is that because there's this labor shortage, workers finally have bargaining power. They can actually use it to get better wages and working conditions, and reject the kind of two-tier contract that's before us. John Deere. This all seems like actually probably objectively the most inspiring thing that's happened in a very long time.
What he said.
What should be the goal of an undergraduate education or an undergraduate philosophy degree, if that's too broad?
I would not advise anyone to major in philosophy unless they had a plan. Don't just do it because it's cool.
Yeah,
that's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's how you end up as a podcaster.
But really, if you want to be a professor, if you want to go to law school, if you have some concrete plan, this is what I'm going to do with my philosophy degree, that's one thing. Don't just do it because you like to read Nietzsche.
Yeah, it could also,
that's a bad life plan.
Could also double major and have,
yes, like we did.
Yeah.
But don't focus your education on philosophy. I would say the goal of an undergraduate education is to come out knowing some basic things that we should just all know and that we will probably forget within 5 years of graduating, and being employable and having developed your social skills and having developed some thinking skills.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to me that last part is probably the most important. Because you can.
Yeah, I feel like being employable is the most important.
Yeah, although it's also the least reliable, thing, and it's also tricky because the more people who get to go to college, the less of a leg up having gone to college gives you in the labor market. And so it's like, I'm not saying that this can't work for individuals, but I mean, ultimately,
okay, well, if you're going to go farther, then that's you have to start there.
Well, that's true too.
So it should contribute in some way to a career path.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with college cost as much as it does in the United States, there's a lot of pressure for it to do that. I mean, I think ideally, if you just want to spend, I think just spending 4 years, kind of focused on learning and thinking and all that stuff. I think it's a valuable human experience that's worth having, even if it doesn't lead to anything, any sort of different job that you could necessarily have without it.
I agree with that. I think it's a valuable experience no matter what, but depending on, I don't want to put that much money into something and not see that thing realize at least some monetary return or contribute to a monetary return.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think that, again, I think there may be two levels to the conversation. One is maybe how should college work, and the other is given the way it works right now, if you're just giving individuals practical advice, what would it be? And I think those two can really come apart.
Yeah, and I'm not saying everybody needs to go to college, but if you go to college, what should the goal be? And there are plenty of other paths that I think are equally as valid. But given that you're in college, what should you be trying to get out of it?
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. So I mean, right. No, that makes sense. So, I mean, I think that, and again, I think ideally, I'd like college to be free, and
I agree.
And then I think that would, even though it would mean that like you got less of a leg up, just from going to college, it would also, like have less pressure that it's like, oh my God, what if I don't get a job doing this specific thing? And whatever. I'd also like it to be the case that if you that you shouldn't have to go to college in order to have like a decent standard of living too, which is a much larger issue. Because also, I mean, this is kind of what Freddie DeBoer was talking about, that book, The Call to Smart, that like also legitimately it's not for everybody.
No,
like there are all sorts of different people who have all sorts of different skills and propensities. And, we should set up society in such a way that, that you don't need to do that to have a secure and comfortable life.
Sure.
Sure. So Steve.
Watermelon is outstanding. Big fan of watermelon. Oh. Much more so than cantaloupe. Go up a little bit. Right there.
Oh, well, yeah. What about watermelon? There we go. I'm probably not as big a fan as you are, but I like watermelon. I also like it more than cantaloupe. I'm actually not that crazy about cantaloupe.
Well, that's what you said. You said, which I think we all interpreted in the nuanced way that you meant it.
Yeah. Steve says the wolf clip wasn't that bad. He was just being charitable to the host of the show he was invited to. I think that's possible too. I think that's another problem with the way that people react to things on social media, that like it really promotes like just reacting to 90-second clips of something, which, very often you get a very different, I mean, certainly in my case, right, there have been many, many times that when I actually watch the whole thing, I have a different impression. So I don't know if this is true in this case or not, because it was on Jimmy Dore and I can't stand watching that guy. So I'm not going to watch the whole, hour of it or whatever. So I will just take your word for it on that.
Right below. Well, I do the laundry. And as far as I know, nobody's ironing anything around here. We don't even have an iron as far as I know. So if Ben is ironing his own shirts, it's a secret from me. Our very possession of an iron is a secret from me. So I'm going to say nobody.
Yeah, Jason Miles last night on This Is Revolution reacting to like the photo they were using of me for the thumbnail. He was wearing a plaid shirt. He was like, "Oh, Ben's shirt looks just like mine, except it looks like it's been ironed." Nope, it wasn't. Just not crinkled the way that his was.
No, we're just screwing around here, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so E says, finally, I found you guys again. I lost you after the move. Is this your normal time from now on? When is your book coming out?
This is not our normal day, time.
Okay.
Anything.
So for anybody in E's position, there is not. So it used to be in the olden days that
back in my day.
That's right. Back in July.
That's my day.
That we did the Philosophy Fridays, and we've kind of moved things around to consolidate the YouTube schedule a little bit, since it was getting really hard to juggle the schedule, and so instead of the regular Philosophy Fridays, we've been doing a regular philosophy segment that Jen has been coming on for at the end of the regular show on Monday night. This is just something we're doing this week. This is not a normal thing.
We're just screwing around.
Because I can't do the usual Thursday thing. I'm going to be at a conference, so we're just doing this sort of impromptu stream tonight.
I am taking this very seriously, as you can see.
When is your book coming out? New Year's Eve is when my book is coming out.
Woo!
It is available for pre-order right now.
Woo!
So, check it out. Redemmas.org is where I always send people for that. Worker-owned bookstore in Baltimore that I know that they have been very friendly to all of my past work and to Michael's, when it gets the web came out and all of that. So send people there. But also, like, if you just buy the normal places out of habit or whatnot, it is available at all of
the normal places.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever. I
think Amazon is just not the normal place. Sorry for all this squirming around. This is why I have a Papasan chair in my office. I can't do the chair thing like a normal person.
Yeah. Let's see.
Does Ben get anything done when walking the cats? No.
Well, there's only one cat.
Still no.
And also nobody walks him.
So no.
So yeah, he doesn't like going outside.
No.
In fact, he objects to it strenuously.
Yes. And vocally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry, there's a Jen question. And here.
Is Jen one of those people who avoids political labels?
Oh.
Well, that's addressed to you. So what do you think?
I don't think so. I think that she's just not as focused on that as as I am. Yeah. I mean, I
do have a whole other thing going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I watch as much baseball as you do. I don't know when I would ever watch political YouTube.
I've never once watched political YouTube.
Well, you were on Monday.
Well, I was on.
Okay.
On Monday.
There you go. Let's see. Yeah, so there's a question about Jimmy Dore. I will say all I said about him a minute ago was that I find him very irritated, and that's just if I find him irritated, I'm going to find him irritated. That's just the deal. I think it's I think his worst takes. I think the worst stuff personally is probably his interactions with Anna Kasparian. You can look into that. I think it's at least as much as this is kind of a PMC way of putting it. I think
what?
Sort of annoyingly middle class kind of way of putting it. I think severely unprofessional is about the nicest thing you could say about that. Yeah.
Feet are falling asleep.
But I also think I find the way that he'll go after people and all that extremely unhelpful. Now, that's not to say that he's wrong about everything or that he's never made a good point or anything like that. But
I need a booster seat.
But I just but also, Anna's a good friend of mine. That bothers me. And he does, there's a lot of just sort of yelling in the camera about how horrible people are. And as somebody who often doesn't think the people he's yelling about are as horrible as he thinks they are, I think this is about the most diplomatic way I could put it. I'm just going to leave it there. So
if Ben finds him annoying, I too would probably find him annoying because I find more people annoying than
I probably do have a higher tolerance than Jen does. Let's see. It's a Steven Pinker book in the background. That's Enlightenment Now, which is a really bad book, but you kind of have to read these things to have opinions about them. This is actually when it came out, I was teaching a class at Rutgers called Hume, Kant, and the 18th Century. And on the last day of class, actually, I told them that if they got, that at least this class should enable them to understand that Steven Pinker has no idea what he's talking about, when he talks about the Enlightenment, and neither do a lot of his critics, because because a lot of that debate about that book was about like, okay, look at all these these Enlightenment philosophers thought that like reason was amazing and it could solve everything, and Pinker celebrates that, but is that true? And I told them, look, you should know by now that none of these people know what you're talking about, right? Like, Kant, we just spent all semester reading Kant and Hume, who wrote hundreds of pages about the limits of what reason could do, right? The Kant book is not an uncritical celebration of pure reason, right? It's a critique of pure reason. And so, yeah, I mean, I think he just kind of doesn't like know what he's talking about. The linguistic stuff is better.
I look like a disembodied head now.
Let's see.
How are you both wearing headphones on?
I
don't know.
On the same computer /
I have no
podcast.
idea how this stuff works.
It's yeah, like it's easy to order this online. It's like one thing. They both plug into the same thing that in turn plugs into the computer. It like splits into 2 headphones.
Just at some point, Ben handed them to me and said, "Here, put these on." I was like, "All right."
Let's see.
To Jen, what does that say?
To Jen.
Part of the value is the letters after your name, the degree for which is often irrelevant.
It depends.
It depends. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is tricky because, like, I think
it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, like, I mean, clearly there are a lot of things where the function of making people have a degree to do something is as much as anything else just to narrow down the pool and and decide who gets to do it. Because it's like, honestly, like if you're like, okay, like if you're a philosophy professor, if you're like if you have a job where you're just teaching, are you actually more able to do that because you have a PhD and not like a master's degree? Maybe, right? It's not totally obvious to me that that's the case, but yeah. I guess that helps. I mean, whatever. It's a cool thing to do, right? You learn a lot. You feel this
thing to have.
Feel the sense of accomplishment.
Call yourself doctor.
When they do the congratulations. I mean, I generally tell people to call me Ben, but when you but like, yeah, when they do the congratulations, Dr. Burgis or whatever.
That's a sweet moment.
You feel like you've like, it's like one of the closest real life equivalents to winning, like beating the final boss in a video game.
This is winning. It is winning.
But do you really need that to do the job? At least if it's not like there's not a research component, at least it's a pure teaching position. I
mean, you take more classes.
No, that's true.
You learn more.
So there's stuff. There's more stuff you could draw on. So yeah. I think it's borderline maybe.
Oh, so I did philosophy and English, and Ben did philosophy and history.
Yeah. I can't like I would have. I'm trying to remember if I was ever actually thinking about going to grad school in history instead of English. I mean, I think probably that. Since philosophy is lighter on the research aspect and heavier on just kind of like making arguments about one really specific thing, you could write a paper that's like you're taking issue with like one paragraph of something somebody has said.
So
like
nitpicky.
For better or for worse, that might be a better fit with my personality.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Right under where we were. Yeah, I assume this comes from the photo that I posted on both Twitter and Instagram of the latest infusion of books into my office. An Interview with a Vampire was one of them. The books that I put in my office, those are my favorite books. And I don't even really own any books except for the ones on my Kindle. So I'm having to either buy them myself or, people I received some. I received that one from this guy as a birthday present. So yeah, everything that's in my office is a favorite book. The sequels, you don't really need those.
Yep, never read it. Movie's fun.
Oh, the movie's delightful.
Let's see. What's the biggest philosophical disagreement between the two of you?
Free will.
Okay, I was going to say God, but
Okay.
free, but those are
those are the two. Yeah,
those have got to be the two
it's
contenders.
1 and 1A.
Right? Yeah. Right. I'm a atheist and a compatibilist. Jed is a theist, and I'm actually not quite sure about the label, but definitely not a compatibilist.
Definitely not.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the thing about fighting against the tyranny of utility, I think that's about the value of college degree. Again, I think this is one of the reasons that we should want college to be tuition free, to sort of take off some of that pressure that, like, we're spending, blah, blah, blah amount of money, like, you got to be able to get something when you get out of this that's going to turn that around.
Yeah, like you were saying, there's a difference in how should things be, and given the way things are now, what should we be trying to get out of it?
Yeah.
Ideally, what we would get out of it would be different things than how things are now.
See, yeah, Oliver said so many math majors experience the topology to Excel spreadsheet trajectory once they graduate. Because my mom's a math professor, I at least know what the first part means. Why else do I know what an Excel spreadsheet is? But I know
that part.
I know that even without it. But I
remember Kathy and Rich talking to us about topology one time, and I was just like, go back up. Do we believe it would be possible or desirable to eliminate degrees? I mean, I want my doctor to have gone to medical school. But I mean, yeah, in there's some degrees that I would like for people to have, but I think eliminating grades in a lot of cases, this is what I always say in job interviews. I say, what big change would you make? Well, I would eliminate grades. But again, there are things like doctors, I want to know that you can tell my liver from my pancreas before I go in.
Well, I think you could have people have to be like, prove that they had a sufficient knowledge of something without necessarily assigning them grades.
But isn't that what a grade is?
Yeah.
Like, do you know 90% of this stuff? It's a 90%.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that you could have a system where you did generally. I mean, I'm with you on grades. Like, I hate grades. I would love to get rid of them. This is what I was talking with Thaddeus about on Monday night. Before he came on, one of the things I was talking about him about, like, one of the reasons that I find it so refreshing. I mean, like I said, I'm still teaching adjunct class at Rutgers, but since lately I've been doing more teaching outside of traditional university settings. The thing with Thaddeus that we're doing at Renegade University, the speakeasy thing I'm doing in December about Gia Cohen and Jason Brennan, the classes I've taught for Michael Albert's thing, School for Social and Cultural Change. And one of the things that I love about that is that it's kind of just the part of teaching that I like and not all of the parts that I hate, because nobody's getting a grade. So you never have to spend a single minute of your time teaching grading or God, talking to people about their grades or any of that stuff. Right. And of course, that's also tied in with the fact that because nobody's getting a grade, nobody's getting a graduation requirement. So the only reason anybody is there is that they are intensely interested in the subject, which, oh my God, I love that so much.
For me, putting aside my personal feelings about grading and all that, I feel like grades are a hindrance to learning and an incentive to cheat.
Yeah. I think both of those things for sure. And, so again, there might be some specific things for which you might need at least some functional equivalent of grades. But I think for the most part, I think we'd be better off without them. But honestly, I think it's a relatively recent historical invention. If you were, if you were at, Plato's Academy, or even you're studying theology with Thomas Aquinas in Paris or whatever, nobody's getting a grade for that. Or maybe I'm very wrong about this, but I really don't think so. I think.
Go ahead.
I think this is a relatively recent historical invention. I think you could have a perfectly good educational system without it, because it's all about sort of credentialing. You have to have some way of ranking people, and that's, again, there might be things that you need to have some sort of threshold for sufficient knowledge about, some functional equivalent of grades. But, I don't really think that you need that for...
Yeah, when you go to fix my car, do you know where the carburetor is?
Sure.
Sure. I want some sort of proof that you do before you start digging around in there.
Not gonna go the Dave Rubin route and say that if we didn't have regulations like requiring people to to have licenses or whatever, it'd be fine, because like if they were incompetent, they get bad Yelp reviews and that'll be enough.
No, that's not the route I will take on that. Let me say though that as much as grading can be, depending on what you're grading, as much as grading can be unpleasant at times, it is nowhere near as unpleasant as going through the process of dealing with students you have caught cheating.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw that out there.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Should government organizations, democratic workplaces...
This is for you. I'm just going to... Sit back. Sorry, Bernie. Yeah, she knocked over the Bernie portrait that Nando's sister made for me. So government organizations and democratic workplaces. In the 1970s, the UK Labour government made some moves towards making the NHS hospitals democratic workplaces. Yeah, I think to an extent. Obviously, like, if we're not talking about some 25th century, like ultra advanced socialist utopia where we just assume that we don't have wars anymore, like I don't want soldiers voting on that necessarily, but I think within reason, I think you could have, even in the public sector, I think you'd have tons more autonomy on the workplace level, and that's all to the good. What he said. No, but really, if there's a question I don't really have an answer to, something like that, I figure I'll agree with whatever Ben said if I knew more about it, since I generally agree with what Ben says. Except for free will and God.
Right. There we go. Let's see.
There was something up there that was... I don't know.
Well, let's get to Super Chat anyway.
Okay.
So Ty Summers, thank you so much for the Super Chat. Says, is there a way towards workplace democracy without worker co-op? A way to incentivize public companies to implement it? Well, you could have... I guess it depends what you mean. Like, you could have...
I've been canceled. No. I'll pick him up right now. Excuse me. Bernie.
So yeah, you could have like the German stuff, that co-determination, which is where you could have a law that requires like a company above a certain size or anything that like sells stock to have a certain number of seats on the board of directors be like worker representatives. Matt Brunig is really into ideas like that. I'm not sure how far that could give you, but yeah, I think that, I think probably, outright worker co-ops or what we were just talking about, public sector with some degree of democratic autonomy on the workplace level, would be the ways that it's hard to tell, because if it was just like 100% of the seats of the worker board, then that just is a co-op, right? So I guess I'm not entirely understanding the question, but let me know. It doesn't have to be a super chat if that kind of got what you were asking about or not. All right.
I barely know how to turn the computer on too, to be honest.
Let's see. Munda Skeptical sounded like they might have a good question. Yeah, Antonio, most of the professions have specific requirements and exams people have to pass in order to get licensed. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like,
Yeah, that sounds to me like grades, basically.
yeah, I mean, I could see that in a way that kind of is the equivalent, and that's probably, at least in a lot of cases, necessary. I mean, like a lot of times right now, it's tied with like you have to pay some big fee to take it, which is seems like a sort of way to edge out competition. You know, that sometimes, you know, industry groups will lobby for stuff like that. Like this is the sort of thing that libertarians are always pointing out, and it's not entirely wrong. But like the idea that you should have to pass.
You should have to prove your competence.
Yes, that seems totally right to me. That you shouldn't be able to do anything that can like seriously harm my car, you know, never mind like brain surgery or whatever, you know, without proving, you know, some sort of competence.
Yeah, you're not going to stick your LASIK laser in my eye unless I know you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and like or like in the original Dave Rubin thing, you know, it's like I'm not just going to trust that if build contractors cut corners while they're making buildings and it falls down, that, you know, that the threat of bad Yelp reviews, you know, is going to stop them from doing that.
Angie's List. Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. Where are we?
At what point does being honest become a problem?
Well, I mean, could just go with the stock example, right? That if you know, our friend Ryan is in the living room, you know, watching TV, and somebody knocks on the door, and they're holding an axe dripping blood, and they say, "Is Ryan here?" You know, that seems like a place where honesty would be a problem.
Yeah.
Is this
you know, honesty is a virtue.
Sure.
And
but you could say it's a virtue without saying that, like,
well, I wasn't done.
Okay.
I wasn't done. Like, honesty is a virtue. There we go. No, what I was gonna say is that, you know, if you look at virtue ethics, and honesty is clearly a virtue, one of the answers to the question of, well, what do you do when virtues conflict, is that there really is no conflict. If you really understand what the virtues are, then you're never going to have a place where the virtues conflict. So, you know, like the classic example there is your friend asks you, you know, how her new hat looks on her, and are you kind or are you honest, you know, and the idea is, if you really understood kindness and you really understood honesty, there wouldn't be this perceived conflict. You know, if you truly understood what the virtues are, you see that they don't conflict. I feel like being honest is not the problem. I mean, you know, if someone with a bloody axe comes after Ryan, you know, we have obligations to Ryan. We have an unspoken agreement that we will protect him, especially when he is in our home. So violating that, I feel like, would be a violation of honesty, even though we don't. Stop looking at it like, yeah. So we have kind of an implicit contract there, and I feel like breaking the contract is dishonesty. So I feel like if you really look at what honesty is and what things that could conflict with honesty are, I don't think it does become a problem.
Yeah, I'm a little more skeptical about that. I think that I mean, I think values could just come into conflict, and that, like, sometimes you just have to weigh which matters more in a given situation, or find some principle to decide which matters more. But I just don't think there's any guarantee that they're always, you know, that they're always going to point in the same direction.
Okay. I guess that's another thing
yeah, I mean, it's probably not as big.
Although, we're not going to get off and be like, how can you think this?
Yeah, it's probably not as big as the other two. why aren't y'all determinists? Well, I think it depends.
I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why.
No, I completely agree with that. Like, I think that so in other words, it depends what you mean when you say determinist. Like, if you just mean, why don't you believe in causal determinism, right? Determinism about physical cause and effect. I mean, I don't believe that or disbelieve it. I mean, it's just not my department, like,
yeah.
I think maybe that's true. I mean, I think
maybe it is, and maybe it isn't, it can be both.
But yeah,
I'm not, I'm not a scientist. I'm not, I don't feel qualified to.
Yeah, I don't have to. All the things that I might feel like I need to have an opinion about, what exactly is the right interpretation of quantum mechanics is not one of them.
No. Although I did take a very interesting class on the philosophy of quantum mechanics. It was very good, very interesting. But still, I feel like I am not qualified to answer.
Yeah, it's the one with the David Albert book, right? The quantum mechanics.
Maybe I didn't do any of the reading. The reading was too hard for me, honestly. I started out trying to do the reading, and then I realized that the professor was so good at breaking it down. Why did I need to do the reading and just confuse myself when I could go in as a blank slate and have it all presented to me in the best possible way?
Fair enough.
Peter Lewis, if you ever see this, you're the best, man.
Yeah. So, but if what you mean by determinist is like somebody who thinks that determinism is true and therefore we don't have free will, then this gets back into the thing that Jen said was our biggest philosophical disagreement. Certainly is one of the top two contenders, which is whether, if cause and effect determinism is true, that would therefore mean that we don't have free will.
Is that what you call it? I call it causal determinism.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I'm just worried that people won't know what I mean, if they're just not familiar with the terminology.
This is literally what my intro class is doing, right? Last week, this week, and next week.
Yeah. So,
and they said they can't tell what my personal view is from the way that I have presented the material, which Ben always accuses me of presenting it in a biased fashion. Can you believe that? So apparently that is not, in fact, the case.
Yeah. So I think there are different senses which people can have control over their actions. There are definitely senses that aren't compatible with determinism. There are senses that are. I think oftentimes we talk about free will, it's a little unclear which one we're talking about. But the real sense or the one that compatibilists make up so they can if we define it this way, why we can slide these. Why is it that I suspect you of teaching this in a biased way?
I don't say that in the classroom.
Sure, just like I don't say that that people can have the right kind of control to be responsible for their actions without having magical powers. If you.
Somehow this came up at dinner last
night.
Yes,
it did. And I said...
Ben told a couple of undergrads that I believed in magical powers. I was like, thanks. Totally undermined my credibility. At least they're in my critical thinking class and not in my intro class.
Yeah. I mean, I think my example was if somebody, has made plans to meet you for dinner and then they just leave you hanging at the restaurant. This is like the pre-smartphone age. You just there's no good way to get in touch with them until later. And then you finally track them down and you say, what the hell, what happened? And they say, oh, it wasn't my fault. And you say, oh, really? And then they say, yeah, see, because starting with the Big Bang, this chain of cause and effect, even if you agree with them about the premise, you probably won't agree with the conclusion that this wasn't under your control the way that's relevant to blame, which gets you to the sort of basic intuition behind being a compatibilist, to get the basic intuition behind being an incompatibilist.
I mean, bad actions are still bad actions.
Sure, but I don't think the intuition is just that they're bad. I think the intuition is that it's your fault that you did this.
Yeah, and I think those are normal human reactions. Whether they're justified or not is a different thing, but I don't think we could get rid of them even if we wanted to.
Fair enough. All right. Paul, thank you so much for the super chat. What's Jennifer's answer to the Euthyphro dilemma? Well, before turning that over, I'll just say that I think a distinction that's really important to make here, even though I'm obviously not a theist, is that you don't actually have to have one to be a theist. Like, you could be a theist and just think that God is perfectly morally good, but moral goodness is not itself defined by anything about God, right? I mean, I think that's all totally consistent. And there are definitely theists who have that position. But what would Jennifer's answer to the question be?
Well, I would say that when we approach Euthyphro, we do it like we have no idea what God is. Like God is just this blank slate name, so that either one can work. It can't be both. So that either one has to be true, but they're both problematic. But like I said, I think the problem there is that we treat the term God as though we don't know what it means. And I think that because God is of his nature completely good, that God is not going to command us, as one of my favorite professors' examples was, to stick hot needles into newborn babies' eyes.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I think, that God is logically incapable of commanding us to do things that are wrong.
Yeah. For my response to that argument, see my new book. In Christopher Hitchens, What He Got Right, How He Went Wrong, Why It Still Matters.
Nice plug there, Ben.
I know, it was very smooth.
Very subtle.
In the chapter where I talk
Nuance.
about all of his debates about atheism, I talk about this exact argument, and I get into well, it's God's nature, or if God didn't have that nature, he wouldn't be God. And I get into all of that, and I'm probably much more coherent and eloquent, like when I'm spending pages writing about it, than if I just tried to do it on the fly. I will say I disagree, but you can go read the book to find out why.
Oh.
Let's see. Michael says, all caps, class reductionism is bad. I mean, my take on this. So Adolf Reed, who is somebody who I don't agree with about everything. I think if you read all of his stuff, you read all my stuff, you can probably sort out for yourself what we disagree about. But but I agree with him about a lot, and I think he's a really brilliant thinker and commentator. And he has an essay about this in the New Republic that I really like, called "The Myth of Class Reductionism." And he, I agree with what he says, which is basically that, well, to the extent that I understand what people mean when they say that, I agree that it would be bad if anybody really believed what was being portrayed. I'm a little skeptical that anybody quite does believe what's being portrayed. Like, if there's some socialists out there who think that, like, racism and sexism and homophobia either like no longer exist or don't hurt anybody, or are just, completely solved if we take care of the economic stuff, that I just haven't met that person. And I guess if they exist, I disagree with them, but I do tend to think that it's usually a straw man of what people think. That's, for better or for worse, my take on that. Anonymous. Anonymous has, thank you so much for the super chat. The super chat just consists of a thumbs up. I'm not quite sure which of the things that we said was being thumbs up, but I appreciate it regardless.
It's just us.
So,
we get a thumbs up.
Yeah, Sean mentions I think the most recent Adolf Reed article, The Entire Country is the Reichstag Fire, which, by the way, there's a fun story in there. People might have heard me mention this before, but just because, like, obviously, given my combination of interests, because I'm a huge Adolf Reed fan, I just wrote this book about Christopher Hitchens. I was really interested, and also because Adolf Reed's son, Torrey Reed, has been on the show a couple times in the past, and he's somebody I'd like to think is a friend. He had there's this fun story in there where Adolf Reed is talking about, and again, what I agree with in that article, what I disagree with. I think you can just compare what I've said to what's in there, and you can figure it out for yourself. But there's a fun story about where Adolf Reed is talking about drinking at a bar in Washington, D.C. with Christopher Hitchens, and also with his son Torrey Reed. And And he and Hitchens are arguing about the war in Afghanistan. And Adolph Reed says the 82nd Airborne has like arrival in a situation has never actually made anything better. It's always made it worse. And Torrey reminds him of the one exception to that, which would be Oxford, Mississippi in 1962, when they, I think they were arriving to enforce the integration of Ole Miss. So anyway, it's just an interesting story that jumped out at me from that article. I mean, I think as far as the sort of larger commentary on like the sort of snapshot of American politics in 2021, I think the points of disagreement that are there, I think I've written about extensively, and I don't know, go read it. It's like I said, I'm going to be, like that's probably the much better version of my take on all this stuff that I'm likely to give right now. All right, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, Emil. We need more class focus, not less. I think that, like, I think if you really want to help people in marginalized groups, like, in a weird way, it reminds me of the Charlie Kirk thing where, like, he was like, oh, you're a populist. What do you want to do to actually help the populist? And it seemed like his answer was to just say the word family a lot. And it's not
family.
It's very unclear what he actually wanted to do to help these families. He just wanted to talk about
family.
Them. Families are amazing. Sure, yeah, I like my family, but what is it specifically that you want to do, right? Like if
I am Groot. Family.
And so it seems like sometimes I get a frustrating feeling from some progressives that they just want to like sort of. They feel like if they sort of ritually mention different forms of oppression enough that adds up to something they're going to do about it. And I kind of think, I mean, maybe this is class reductionism. I don't think so, but like, I kind of think usually the most important thing that you can do to help people is to actually like meet their material needs and give them healthcare and, education.
This is crazy talk right
more
here.
Money, that's
crazy talk,
and in fact, especially if we're talking about, racism in the United States. I mean, a lot of the biggest effects of the sort of long-term legacy of Jim Crow and all that is that there are these crazy racial disparities in who has those things that I just mentioned. And so I think if you want to do something about that, then I think giving everybody all that stuff is, again, maybe a little simple-minded, but it seems to me that that's probably the best thing that you can that you can do. I mean, that like it's like I don't know, like mentioning all the horrible things that people have been through, once every 5 minutes probably does them less good than giving them healthcare and enough money to live on.
Family.
Yeah. Let's see.
255 AD has a
question. I read a historical novel where the Roman emperor calls in a Greek philosopher to give him philosophical advice about his policy choices. Would you want that job? I don't know. I think it depends on the Roman emperor. Some of them seem like if they decided they didn't like your advice, they'd probably, send you into the arena to be torn apart by wild animals or something. And I wouldn't like that.
No.
If it was like a sane Roman emperor, maybe it's, which always strikes me as one of the problems with having an emperor
that they're insane,
or at least that if you, if it turns out that you get one who's insane, there's sort of no recourse, right? That since you can't like vote them out of office or, sue them, then you're just sort of stuck with the insanity, which,
but if Joe Biden wanted me to come give him philosophical advice, I'd be happy to.
That is a fascinating image. Could just imagine that conversation, Hey man. Yeah.
Well, he would have to invite me.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know.
I am the Greek.
The Greek.
I am the Greek.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, I think American presidents have way too much power, but also not as much as Roman emperors had. Like, that is a significantly greater concentration of power. And like, also, I mean, this is always my point about like socialism and human nature, that I think that I always think people kind of get the relationship wrong. They'll say that if you think that people are kind and loving and cooperative, then maybe we could have a better and fairer society. But if you think they're selfish and cruel and callous, then we're just stuck with what we've got. And I kind of think the other way around would make more sense, if anything, that the more you're worried about people mistreating each other, given enough power over each other, the more you should want social institutions that are going to make it harder for people to mistreat each other. So that the Roman emperor thing seems like a really extreme example of that, because if you get stuck with a Nero or a Caligula, then they can, act in insane and abusive ways, and you don't have any recourse. But even like on a workplace level, or even just like anytime you have extreme economic inequality, and I don't mean like, one person's getting paid $5 more than another person, like even at Mondragon, which is, the largest worker cooperative, in the world, there are people who are being paid more than other people, but since you have to vote on pay scales, you don't have people who are paid like hundreds of times more than other people are, like you do in American corporations. And I think when you have extreme economic inequality, then that gives some people crazy amounts of power over another, because if you're like economically desperate, you're willing to do a lot of things. And if you have ample means, you can take advantage of that. And so I think the more you're worried about people taking advantage of people, then the more you should worry about economic inequality. But we have a super chat. This is, sorry, how do you pronounce this again?
Anonymous.
Says,
I just like saying that.
Yeah.
Anonymous. I am Greek.
How do we go about shifting funding away from the U.S. military budget and actually do decent things for society? That's the real obstacle. I think it's a real obstacle for sure. I think, I think you kind of have to, elect people who want to do that. I mean, I know that's kind of a simplistic answer, but I mean, that's, that's definitely a big part of it. I was actually talking about this earlier today.
Not with me.
Not with you, but I think you were teaching. But that
about police brutality. That's what we covered today in my ethics.
Okay,
class.
so we're both talking about fun subjects. Yeah, I mean, I think like in terms of trying to sort of get more of an anti-war movement in the United States, I think the problem is, I mean, the good news is that I think a lot of Americans, it's not like 2002. I'm old. I remember 2002.
Sorry, my foot's asleep. Anyway, go on.
When like everybody put like 4 flags on their cars, the guy with only 3 flags, what's wrong with him? And people were like, burning Dixie Chicks records because they said they didn't like George Bush and, and all of that stuff.
They're not the Dixie Chicks anymore. Do you know that?
Yeah, now they're just the Chicks.
Yeah. That sounds stupid.
It does sound stupid. But back when they had a less stupid sounding name, there was like crazy, like people were boycotting them, burning their records, whatever. Because of that, there was this kind of jingoistic hysteria, after 9/11. And for like a couple of years after that. And the good news now is that I think the atmosphere is really, really different. Like even when the U.S. left Afghanistan, as much chaos as there was, I think all the polls, like most people still approved of it, because it's like, yeah, we've been at war for 20 years. Like, what are we going to do? Stay for another 10 years? That doesn't sound good. So I think that's the good news. I think the bad news is that it's really difficult to get most Americans to care very much about things that the U.S. military might do in other parts of the world, just because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Also, I think most people have more pressing things,
well, of course, right.
To worry. Sure. Given the state of society,
yeah, they have things that impact them in more obvious ways, that they're worried about. So, I mean, I guess maybe this goes around in a little circle from your question, but I mean, I think one of the best ways of getting Americans to care more about this is to sort of point out, hey, we could stop like having this crazy overseas empire where there are, 600 or however many it is American military bases, and they're spread over the entire world, and we can drone bomb a teenager in Pakistan, in like 10 minutes, is somebody in a basement of Virginia, the CIA headquarters, whatever, deciding to do it, that if we weren't spending all this money on this, that we'd have more money to spend on doing things that actually concretely benefit people in the United States. I think that's probably the best sales pitch, realistically, unfortunately, for getting Americans to care about it, right? Because I think a lot of times, if you're sort of appealing to look at this horrible thing that's happening to somebody on the other side of the world, I think it's easy not to think about it. I think people often feel sort of fatigue at being, told, especially because if you consume certain kinds of media, you just get this nonstop parade of horrors about all the bad things happening anywhere, and then people end up just tuning out. So I think the more you can tie it in to ways that can concretely help people here, I think the better off you probably are. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. What's good in here. Some people are arguing about the definitions of race and class and racism. I'll just let you guys have fun with that.
Who is your favorite, most influential philosopher?
Ooh.
Marx?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Marx, Kant, Hume.
Yeah.
For him.
Yeah.
For him.
Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, if we're not going to do,
this is one of these married show things. What is his favorite dessert? What is the other person's favorite dessert? And you show them whether you know him or whether you don't. So yeah, that's what I think your answer is.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about pre-20th century, I think those would absolutely be the top three. I think. Yeah, I think when we get into the 20th century, it's harder to narrow down. But yeah, fair enough.
Okay, and how well do you know me?
I don't know. Aristotle, maybe. Yeah. Because the
old school.
Yeah, you did say once that if you were ever going to get a tattoo, it would be eudaimonia in Greek. So
I did say that.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten any tattoos. Don't worry, moms. No tattoos. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I think
your mom was appalled enough when I got my nose pierced.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. I could see it in her face. She didn't say anything. She's a good mother-in-law like that, but I could just tell that your parents were less than pleased.
Yeah. So there's a Kant ?
Kant? That's obviously for you.
Yeah. I mean, his contribution to logic is very important because moral philosophy I find extremely convincing. I think the moral philosophy is a mixed bag. I think that there are definitely things that he says that I find, it's not like I'm endorsing every single argument.
The inquiring murderer. Tell him the truth.
Yeah. Yes, I think Kant obviously says lots of things I disagree with, but I do think that there's a core of moral insight there, especially in the formulation of the categorical imperative that's about not treating people merely as means to an end.
No, we're not doing Kant puns. Just gonna throw that out there.
I think I think he's latching on to something really important about what it is to be morally concerned with other people. I mean, in a weird way, I think Hume is probably more right about kind of facts and values stuff, but I think that in terms of the sort of values that I would advocate, I think Kant is onto something very important. Marx is obvious enough, so I don't. Nobody's doing Marx or Hume.
Oh, and in response to someone who said that the nose piercing is about as rebellious as chamomile tea. I don't think that was the thing, the issue. I think they just thought it. I could kind of see like, why did she do that to her pretty face, kind of thing. I just don't think the aesthetic is pleasing.
So this question, I kind of lost it about representationalism and some other view in philosophy of mind. I have very few opinions about philosophy of mind. I just don't know what to think about a lot of that.
Okay.
I don't know. Do you?
Not really.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I covered in my intro class, basically we just talk about, dualism and identity theory and functionalism and which of these sounds best to you, and, talk about what is it like to be a bat, and, the Chinese room. And so we just kind of hit the high points. Yeah.
Play the hits.
Yeah, play the hits.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of high level questions about representationalism and all of that, and is functionalism true? And I don't know. I think that epiphenomenalism is probably and that's not something that I go over in my class, but I think that's probably the best theory. I don't know. I guess I'm probably a little bit more skeptical there because, and I think we could do this without referencing a bunch of 20th, 21st century philosophers of mind that I don't know nearly well enough to say anything well informed about. That, I think we could just talk about Princess Elizabeth, right? With her, her very good questions.
She's my favorite philosopher.
Yeah,
Princess Elizabeth.
Yeah,
what is it, of Bavaria? Is that who?
Bohemia. Yeah. So she was. I'm a fan. She was the one who asked Descartes in correspondence. Well, if the mind stuff is this totally different thing, from the extended stuff, the physical world, then how exactly is it that there's some sort of cause and effect interaction?
How though?
Yeah, exactly. And he, famously did not have a good answer to that.
No, he had a great answer.
He did.
The pineal gland.
Yeah. So how is it that the pineal gland has interacted with this mysterious non-physical stuff? And I guess with epiphenomenalism, so epiphenomenalism is the view that there's sort of only interaction in one direction. That if you, I don't know, you accidentally hit your foot against the door, then that some stuff happens with your physical nerve endings and ultimately your brain, and that causes this sensation of pain that I think the epiphenomenalist, as I understand it, would say that sensation is something that's different, that you could describe all the physical facts correctly and you haven't described that's like an extra ingredient of reality.
Yeah.
But then that sensation of pain doesn't really cause anything to happen, and it doesn't, it only goes in the one direction. That doesn't cause anything to happen in the physical world. But I guess I think that it's still a little mysterious even in the one direction, and also
it's all mysterious though.
And also in the even with saying there's no downward causation, I don't know, if I'm writing a paper with my physical fingers on the physical keyboard, saying that epiphenomenalism is true, and I'm using examples about how I felt pain, isn't that causation from the sensation of pain?
No.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, that's settled.
What is that about how young Ben is? Saw something about how young Ben. Maybe I was just imagining that.
No, I think I did see that.
But I only saw part of it.
Let's see, Dana is fuming.
Silver, you are hilarious.
That's a good question, but we'll go back to it.
I'm so glad how young Ben is. We'll have him for such a long time.
Aw.
Do you know how old Ben is? Are we clear on how that is?
You're
gonna have me for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I'm about to start drawing Social Security or anything. 41, to be clear.
He's already got the trick back, though.
Let's see. Oh, that's fun. Be a scenario where the golden rule would be problematic. Well, I mean, I think it depends how literally you're taking it, because if you're a masochist, right, and you're treating other people as you would want to be treated,
but
that could be an issue.
If we take it in a broader sense, that I'm not sure it is problematic, because you're still, that person just still wants to be happy, wants to have the actions taken that make them happy, and okay,
so there's a level of description on what you're doing. Right. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. There's a question about my dad's politics, and I'm a little.
Well, something about a story you had told.
Yeah, because I've told this story just because I thought it was funny about like him reacting to Reagan being reelected in 1984, because that's like the earliest conversation I can remember about politics. And there was a sort of question about exactly what his political perspective is. And even though I guess I brought it on myself by telling that story again, I just thought it was funny. I don't want to try to describe that in any detail.
You should get your dad on.
Just because he's not a, he's not a public figure.
We should get all our parents on, at the same time.
In the unlikely event that he ever agreed to come on YouTube and talk about it, you could ask him. I don't want to try to speak for him, so I don't want to try to answer it in any detail on
My
that.
mom's coming into town tomorrow. We should get her on.
That is a very interesting thought. Yeah.
Now, my mom is not Kathy. That's Kathy, the mathematician. That's Ben's mom.
Yeah. Let's see. Kyle says, thoughts on the role of morality in Marxist thought. Yeah, so I think that there's a...
sorry, my yawn was not directed at you in any way, Kyle. I'm just really tired.
Yeah, we should probably wrap up soon anyway, but let's do a couple, last ones.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, Marx is not like an ethicist, right? He's not giving you like a explicit moral theory, for sure. Right, like that. That's just.
I have never covered Kant in an ethics class, no matter how deep we were diving into or how many theories.
Marx.
Marx. That's what I said.
You said Kant, but that's cool.
I said Marx.
You meant Marx.
I meant Marx.
Yeah, you talked about Kant.
I talk about Kant in every single ethics class.
You really can't do an ethics class.
So no matter how deep we were diving into the variety of theories, I have never once brought up Marx.
Yes. Yeah. So okay. So he's not a moral philosopher in the sense that like Kant or Mill or any of these people are. He's not giving you an explicit moral theory. He's giving you a theory of history. He's giving you some obviously a political program. He's like, but like he's not telling you like this is exactly what I think morality is. That said, I think that some people sort of take this extra step from what I just said to say that like there's just no sort of moral anything going on there. And I think that's obviously not true. Like just because he doesn't like have explicit views, like this is exactly what justice is, or this is exactly what freedom is, or this is exactly how we should think about he's not John Rawls, right? But
who is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even mean in that sense. I just meant that, like, he's not writing about at that level of explicitness about the kinds of subjects that John Rawls is writing about. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have implicit views about justice and all that stuff, right? Because he clearly does. I don't think you can. I think it'd be very difficult to write about politics for any extended period of time without at least revealing yourself to have implicit positions on what would be a just or unjust, society, or principles or anything like that, right? Like in the Critique of the Gotha program, he's criticizing the Lassalleans. If you don't know who the Lassalleans are, it really doesn't matter that much. Those are just the people he's criticizing, for saying that in a future society, every worker should equally get the product of their labor. And he makes the point that that they're kind of contradicting themselves there, because if everybody's getting back what they put in, product of their labor, that's not equal. Because and here he actually starts to sound sort of proto-Rawlsy. He says,
Rawlsy,
because he says that some people are capable of working more than others, right? That like some people have more physical endurance than others. Some people, have, like various mental or physical skills, to a different extent than other people do. That's
some
just
people got the old trick back.
That's just obviously true. And so he says, and this is the part that sounds most Rawlsy to me, that this is, like if everybody's just getting, getting back what they put in some sense, that's not right, because that's sort of just a natural aristocracy, that you're rewarding people for, which, I mean, it's a little unclear what he means by it, but I think one obvious way of reading that comment is that, you're rewarding people for things that are out beyond their control. He says you might have to, because at least in the sort of initial stage of socialist society, because you need to, so people would have certain incentives. But again, that sounds interestingly Rawls-like to me, right? That because this sounds like the difference principle, that Rawls says behind the veil of ignorance, people might accept a little bit of inequality if it's going to benefit the people who are the worst off, because more stuff's going to be produced, and all of that, which is really interesting, because one of my very favorite 20th century philosophers, G.A. Cohen, who actually you can see one of his books in the background behind us. Which
way should I go?
No, you got it. There you go. The one with the rose, you can see behind us. That's G.A. Cohen, actually teaching a class about that in December at Speakeasy.
Y'all sign up.
Yeah, exactly. But he's a much more strict egalitarian than Cohen, and sorry, Cohen is a much more strict egalitarian than Rawls, because Cohen thinks that ultimately it's still a little unjust if some people are being compensated more than other people due to things beyond their control. Like he's willing to accept inequality if it's like you just choose to make different decisions of your own free will about like work-life balance, that like, you'd rather have more free time than more money, like that's fine.
We have no work-life balance around here.
No, that's a distant, beautiful dream.
For both of us.
But sounds nice. But anyway, I think there's actually a really interesting question about which side Marx would be on in that debate. But Cohen has a lot of good stuff to say about, like, okay, when Marx talks about exploitation, some Marxists will insist that, there's nothing moral about this. They're just describing the subjective economic process. And I kind of think that's bullshit. If you weren't making a moral judgment, you wouldn't call it exploitation. Like that does
sound kind of morally, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's not really a morally neutral descriptive term. So
Lucy's on the move.
Hey, Lucy, come on, Lucy. Yeah, here you go. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Lucy, you're facing the wrong way. Camera's over there.
Yeah.
You want to take that off so people can?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Lucy, show your precious face.
Let's see.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. So anyway, but I think Cohen's right that there are, and Cornel West talks about, I think has a book about this too. I think it's called The Ethical Dimension of Marxist Thought.
Oh,
And he says, and I think that West is interpreting Marx's implicit moral commitments as sort of, if not exactly Kantian, then at least, Kantish.
Conti.
Kanti.
She's on. Woo!
Whoops. Let's see.
Oh, look at her face.
Yeah.
See her face.
Let's see. There was a question.
Lucy, you're a YouTube star.
There you go. There's a question in the. Shabazz is often provides audio commentary in these. He's.
In life, he's very into the audio commentary.
He's almost never seen on screen, but but I think once or twice he might have walked by the computer and his tail, showed up.
But, his little crooked tail.
But yes, you can often hear him on these. He's very expressive. I don't know. So there's a question about reference, and even the really basic questions about reference. Like, I find them really interesting. I really enjoy teaching them, but I have no idea what I think. Like, the
noisy cat.
Yeah, exactly. This should ask. He's been quiet tonight. Yeah. So, I mean, exactly how proper names work and all of that stuff. Like I said, I enjoy reading about it. I enjoy teaching it. What do I think is actually true?
Didn't we do a Philosophy Friday on that?
I think we did do a Philosophy Friday on that. Yeah. So
that's out there.
So you can refer back to that. I think the other part of the question was about sort of tested intuitions versus tested usage, which might have to do with there might be a difference between what emerges when you ask people, what they think about some hypothetical scenario, like the Kripke, Goodell, Schmidt thing. If you have no idea what we're talking about,
don't worry about it.
But also you can see that Philosophy Friday video. But that might be different from what emerges when you look at how they actually use words in practice. Again, really interesting question. I do not know that I have a take on that. I mean, look, Marxism is right about political philosophy. Compatibilism is right about free will.
No.
A and not A can't both be true. These are the things I'm sure about.
Sorry. Dog got caught up in my cord. Sorry. Woo!
Let's see.
To be honest, I'm not sure I can hold out that much longer.
Yeah. You want to do like one more?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is actually longer than I was planning to go tonight. we were just having fun. So
screwing around, like I said.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay Hutch. That's awesome.
Jay Hutch says, hey, Ben, you got to mention my podcast tonight. When I was asked who are the good voices on the left right now, hope I inspire the two people watching. No thanks necessary. Well, thank you anyway. Appreciate it. Let's see.
If you're going to do that, I got to call it a night.
Okay. Well, why don't I just do this lightning round? So say his name one last time. Anonymous says, what's your opinion on reformism versus revolutionary
She's
leftism?
not a Republican. Sorry,
who's a Republican?
Somebody said Lucy looks like a Republican.
I don't know. I mean, she
no.
She looks like a 19th century she looks, she I mean,
what was that Dave said? She should be on a sardine can.
Yeah. Dave said
his brother.
She had a full-on 19th century maritime beard. She looked like she should be on the picture on a can of sardines. I don't know. I mean, like they're Republicans known for having big bushy beards. I mean, not I wouldn't have thought so. So yeah, reformism versus revolutionary leftism. I mean, I think that you need to at least start with reforms to the current system. Realistically, you gotta. It's like if you ever seen Kill Bill, there's a scene in there, Kill Bill Volume 1, which I think I've never gotten Jen to watch with me. One of my favorite movies, but
you watched it one day while I was in the room.
Okay,
so I got a pretty good idea of what was going on.
Okay, but yeah, this goes back to a discussion I had with Kale a while ago when I was in New York about whether, I said I sort of realized the difference between him and me is that I think he likes good movies, and I like good movies, but like I like movies that are awesome. Now that the best movies are both good and awesome, like
Rock of Ages, both good and awesome.
It's a fun movie. Like The Shining is both good and awesome. It's a extraordinarily good movie, and it's also awesome. Is Goodfellas a better movie than trying to think of a Scorsese movie that would be more like Raging Bull? Is Goodfellas a better movie than Raging Bull? Probably not, but it's definitely more awesome. And Tarantino movies are only moderately good, but they're extremely awesome. So
I like this person.
Yeah. So anyway, so if you watch Kill Bill, there's a scene in there where she has to, she's just gotten out of the coma, and she's trying to get up and ready so she can go on her rampage of revenge, but like she's having trouble getting her muscles to work, and she's like, trying to will herself, like wiggle your big toe, and then it's like there's a cut. It's like 12 hours later, and her big toe is finally wiggling, and she's like, okay, hard part's over, and then like she gets the rest of her body going. And so I think it's like, I don't think you're going to get people to have radical structural changes to society if you can't at least get them to, sort of mobilize them to fight for, reforms that aren't going to be much more popular in the short term. I think as far as whether the sort of process for ultimately getting to a qualitatively different type of society, I think you can get it to a certain point with reforms, and then you need to either go backwards or make a much bigger structural change. I would recommend my good friend Bhaskar Sunkara's book, The Socialist Manifesto, where Bhaskar, I think, makes a really interesting case about the sort of history of social democracy and how eventually you have to make radical institutional changes or go backwards. I'm not going to try to replicate that case here. I will just say read Bhaskar's book. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just generally not that disturbed by cinematic violence. It has to be really extreme for it to bother me.
I'm not a fan of cinematic violence.
Yeah, but we are going to leave it there. Gonna call it a night. This is much longer than I was planning to go.
Somebody said I was gonna fall asleep.
Yeah. So we need to. We also haven't had dinner yet, so we need to. We have not. So we need to go. So thanks, guys. This is fun.
Team Snoopy forever.
Left is best.